Hey, Jordan from the Affirmation Project. Want to do a video on who we are. So the question is, who are you? Because I feel like this is a fun exercise to break people's ego and sense of self, and it's something that most people have never even thought of. Have you ever actually thought of who are you? Who is Jordan? Is it where I come from? Is it my background? Is it my body? Is it my mind? So I want to explore some of these concepts. And it's a very good way to introduce people to more truths, because when people realize that they don't even know who they are, then they're more open to realizing other truths that they've never thought of or considered before as well. And it's a good way to break people out of materialism and the ego. A good book on this topic is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He has a chapter where he discusses in the beginning of the book, who we are, and is it your mind, is it your thoughts? And it's really interesting. It breaks down a lot of veils for people. So are you your mind? If we start at the basics, are you your mind or are you your body? If someone asks, who are you? You might say your name. If we go beyond that, because your name is just a construct given to you by your parents at birth, where you're from is just a fluke of where you landed on this earth. So if you look at body and mind, am I my body? If we start with that, the problem with that statement is, I am my body. Yes, you are your body, but what is that? Because if you go down to the basic levels, if you're your body, then you are atoms, because everything's made up of atoms, what science tells us, right? So atoms are as old as the universe itself. They never disappear, they're never created, they're just always there. So instantly that knocks age out of it, because age is kind of a misconception. Our perception of time is misguided because the atoms don't age. The fact that we age is kind of a trick of our consciousness, I believe. So just read my notes here. So basically, if we're all made up of atoms, we are solid, we can touch each other, right? I can knock on the desk. But if you go down to the molecular level, and quantum mechanics and quantum mechanics has shown us insights, they go deeper and deeper into cells and see the smallest parts of what we're made of. So if you get down to the level of an atom, it's actually like something like 99.9999999% empty space. So there's literally nothing in these atoms that make up the human body. So the fact that you have these senses where you can touch and you can hold things, it's all an illusion. It's a trick of your mind, of your consciousness, so that you can experience this physical 3D realm. Science is actually, mainstream science has proven that the whole physicality and your body is an illusion. Now, the measurement problem and observation problem, there's a lot of good videos on YouTube if you want to look up these two terms. It's actually hard to measure anything scientifically, and a lot of scientists kind of brush off the observation problem. So the observation problem, in essence, is that when something is viewed by a conscious being, so the very act of you measuring something or looking at it or giving it your attention changes the outcome of the experiment. So matter itself is manipulated and molded by humans consciously looking at it. So that's kind of where that ancient phrase was, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? That's in essence of where that comes from, that theory. If you look up the double split experiment, that's another interesting video on YouTube. There's plenty of videos about it. It shows how matter can't be observed without it changing, and matter can actually exist in multiple states at the same time. And then when we view it, it picks a state to be in, which is, the observation problem. So if we're looking at our bodies and physicality of who we are, what have we discussed here? So we're 99.999% empty space. We're a construct of our consciousness. We create ourselves. If you look at science and break it down, we shouldn't really be physical. And at the same time, any experiment to observe the body and the physicality is always going to be kind of muddied by the fact that matter is affected by consciousness viewing it in the first place. So that breaks down completely any self that you relate to physicality. So if we can take that off the table, then I think the more main route people would go down is saying that we are our minds. So we are our personalities, our minds. Now, if you go down this route, yes, you are your mind. So what is your mind? Is your mind the mushy bit between your ears, which again is physical, or is your mind your thoughts? Okay, so if it's your thoughts and we go down this route, everybody has their own thoughts, or so we think, right? Now, if you have your own thoughts, you can actually monitor and you can kind of watch yourself thinking. If you've never tried this, you just sit quietly and you can observe your thoughts. As they pop into your head, you can say, whoa, where did that thought come from? Or I'm watching this thought develop now, or I can stop that thought. A lot of the premise of meditation is trying to consciously clear out these thoughts from your head. Now, if you can observe your thought process and thoughts, then who is the observer? So who is observing your thought process? Is that who the real you is? This is what Eckhart Tolle talks about a lot in The Power of Now. So it creeps a lot of people out because they're thinking, who is that silent observer? Is that the real me? And I think that kind of wakes people up and shocks them a bit because everybody's so busy in their thoughts, in their head, they never even really think. It's a constant noise. I always think it's funny about how if you see, say, a typical homeless person on the street who you assume is on drugs and they're talking away to themselves, and you would say that person was crazy, but you're walking on the same bit of tarmac. The only difference is that your thoughts are going on in your head. It's just that he has no filter and he's saying them out loud. So you assume that he's crazy. I'm sure the stuff he's saying, you say a lot more weird stuff in your head. You're just not saying it out loud. So who is the crazy one at the end of the day? Now, if you are your consciousness, so consciousness is not your thoughts. Consciousness is it's very hard to define, but it's your sense of awareness. The fact that if you look into philosophy, it is I think, therefore I am. It's the fact that you know. So that's consciousness. Now, that's kind of the spark of divine in people. That's what makes humans human, why everybody's different and how we're not perfect, because we have consciousness and everybody has a different way of observing this planet or realm that we're in. So if you go down the route of I'm not my body, I'm not my brain, I'm not my thoughts, I am consciousness, that's who I am, then consciousness is kind of the unknown. So if you were to ask or look up any mainstream articles on where consciousness comes from, nobody's really agreed or nobody knows where consciousness comes from. So a lot of materialists would try and put forward the fact that consciousness is just a mistake that happened through the mind. It's just some thought processes, some neurons firing that creates the consciousness, although scientists have never been able to pinpoint or kind of isolate these neurons, and they've never been able to recreate consciousness. That's why, in my opinion, the whole worry about artificial intelligence and AI, I don't think we're anywhere near creating anything like that. I think they could definitely create machines with high intelligence, but they could never create a conscious machine that is aware of itself. I feel that distinction in AI, people will call AI anything as a selling technique now, but the actual creation of a machine that is self-aware, I feel like we're a very long way away from that. But why consciousness is so confusing, there's a good analogy I like to use, is if you have a radio and there's noise coming out of it, there's a newscaster coming out of the radio. If you were to crack the radio open and try and look for the newscaster within the radio, that's the way that trying to search for consciousness inside the brain is. I feel like it comes from a different place. It's not linked to the physical at all. It's kind of projected through us. I feel like the bodies and the physical are just a way for us to experience the 3D and the physical realm. So with consciousness, nobody ever really knows where it comes from, and a lot of this it's really interesting when you look at out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences where the physical is taken out of it. So, your heart stops, you're technically dead, but yet there's so many accounts of consciousness existing beyond the body. So it's really interesting if you look up near-death experiences as well. There's a lot of actual scientific verification that consciousness can exist without the body, as much as mainstream media will never talk about it, mainstream science will never give it any credit. So if you explain these concepts to people and actually get them thinking about who are you, then I feel like it's definitely an eye-opener and it can be an awakening process for a lot of people. They used to call it philosophy back in the day, of trying to figure out one's purpose. Nowadays, you might call it being awake or being woke. If you take all the labels out of it and just you can make fun out of it, have a fun discussion with friends or family about who you are, then I definitely feel like it'll help to open some doors where you can have more kind of meaningful conversations with different people instead of just talking about the usual drivel people talk about. All right, cheers, guys. See you next time.